This video is brought to you by Tom's Diecast Kits and Collectibles. Every once in a while I do a rebuild video on one of these tiny diecast cars. I personally really enjoy doing these as they are quick little projects and are really fun to do. I do want to mention quickly that this will not interfere with the normal scale modeling videos I do on the plastic kits. Those will still be uploaded to the channel on a regular. This is purely extra and for fun. I asked you guys on the last one I did if you wanted to see more of these, and looking through the comments, a lot of you wanted to see more of these. So here we go. We'll be rebuilding a lot of these diecast cars with the new sponsor I have on board, Tom's. They have a big website and also a giant store in the Netherlands, and they ship pretty much worldwide. They offer a wide variety of diecasts, collectibles, kits, and all scales alike. So feel free to check out their website and their inventory, and even hit them up if you have any questions. Now let's get on with the video. So just like a lot of you guys, I'm a big fan of YouTube and watch a serious ton of videos. I follow pretty much all of the major car YouTubers and many other YouTubers that have my interest. Now recently, Tyler Hoover from Hoovies Garage bought a Ferrari 360 Spider, and he is going to be doing a road trip with Vinwiki and also Tavarish in a sort of Top Gear style video series. Now, I've watched a couple of the episodes and I really enjoyed them so far, and also it got me really inspired to build a replica of his car. Now of course it's a bit quirky, as most of his cars are, and therefore has some of the features that might need to be changed if it was my real car, but in this case I'm building a replica of his car as close as I can with the products I have at hand, so I'm just going to replicate it and have fun with it. Now as you can see, first of all it needed to be stripped down, all of the plastic parts needed to be removed, and I could then start stripping the paint. I'm using Paint Stripper from Zero Paints. This is purely for metal parts only. If you're putting plastic parts in it, it will pretty much ruin them. So be aware and just use it on metal. So after letting it soak for a couple of minutes, all the paint is removed, so I put it in the sink to remove any of the excess material and carefully brush it off with an old toothbrush, then dry it off, and I'm ready to move on to the preparation stage. I'm going to be scribing out some of the panel lines to make them a bit deeper, and also have the paint not fill them up immediately after the first couple of coats. By the way, the paint stripper was not thrown into the sink, that was put back into the bottle for use on a next project. Once all of the panel lines were scribed out, I started with sanding it down. It has a couple of imperfections and rough sanding marks from the original casting and manufacturing process, so that needs to be smoothed out in order to make it a lot nicer. That was done with a 400 grit. Once that was all completed, I moved on to cleaning it off with a bit of water and some towels and brushes to remove any dust, and applied a couple light coats of Tamiya gray surface primer, which is perfect for metal. A couple coats of primer were applied, and I let that sit and cure for a couple of hours before moving on to painting the body in the color. I'm using some Zero Paints Giallo Modena. It's an original Ferrari color, which also was on the car Tyler Hoover has, so it's the perfect match. I'm going to start off with some of those hard to reach, easy to forget spots, and then move on to the rest of the body, applying a couple of light coats, letting it dry in between, and then of course moving on later in the process to give it a nice glossy clear coat. After applying a couple more coats of the yellow and getting a nice coverage all over, I let it cure again for about 30 minutes to move on to the clear coat. I applied 2 light coats of clear and a third bit heavier coat of clear to make it all nice and glossy. After the final coat of clear was applied and I was happy with the finish, I let it sit and cure for about a week before moving on to the next stage. Now, some of the panel lines were a bit too yellow and not really looking all that convincing, so I decided to fill them in with some Tamiya Panelline accent color. Now, I decided to go with the black, which was a bit too black. So I carefully started mixing it with some gray just to make it a bit lighter. The black is already in and dried, so I took out a paintbrush and some of the gray Panelline accent color and then just carefully brushed it over the one that was already there, which kind of reacts with it and sort of softens it again and mixes it to make it a bit lighter. Now, it's still not perfect, but it is good enough for a first try, and I'm really happy that it does look a little bit better than just having the yellow panel lines. With all of the parts painted in the base coat yellow, I could move on to adding a bit more details, specifically to the body and also to the window trim with some black and a brush. Now that all of the body components are pretty much finished, I could move on to starting the interior. Some of the interior parts need a bit of cleanup, as there were a couple of mold lines that could be a bit less, so I just sanded and scribed a couple of those off, primed all the parts, and then started painting them in their base coat colors. With all of the parts painted in their base colors, it was time to move on to adding a couple of details. This was all done with a brush and some Vallejo paints and even some Tamiya paints as well, just carefully going over the parts maybe once or twice to get full coverage, and also a couple of different colors to give it a lot more life and a lot more detail. One of the things that stuck out on the actual car Tyler has is the interior. All of the interior parts that normally are a silver were painted in the same color as the body, a bright yellow. So I first laid down a nice coat of silver just to give it a bright base coat to be on top of, and then applied a couple layers of Tamiya X8 yellow. Now, I could have just painted it at the same time I did the body, which probably would have been better, but I didn't, so I had to do it this way. So now that all of the detailing has been completed, I could move on to assembling it all back together. I'm just using some Bob Smith Industries Super Gold Plus. This is a super glue which dries really quickly, of course, and also is pretty safe for clear parts as it shouldn't haze. So ideal for these small projects where you don't want any hazing and just need a little bit of gluing strength to pull it all together. body and interior are now completed, so the final details were left to do on the wheels. The brake discs themselves did not come with any calipers, so I just put on a small drop of super glue, let that cure, and then painted it yellow to kind of simulate a caliper, which looks a heck of a lot better than no caliper at all. The wheels were also detailed with a bit of silver for all the nuts and bolts, and it could then be put together to finish this one off. With a little bit of touching up on the rear and some black paints, that is pretty much it for this one. Now let me know down in the comments below what you think of this build series and what I should do next. And I also just want to give you a heads up, this is not going to change the normal schedule with any of the other builds I do. I'm still going to be building plastic model kits in the usual fashion, and I will still be uploading videos of that. This is purely extra and for entertainment purposes only, and simply because I like it. And if I like it, you hopefully like it as well, so let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this build, and maybe give me some inspiration for future builds to come.